Which object in the solar system is so unexplored that we knew almost nothing about it until 2015? Which planet lost its status in 2006, on the surface of which celestial body is the cold 3 times more deadly than at the coldest point on Earth? Those who are interested in space topics have probably already guessed that we're talking about Pluto, one of the most mysterious objects in our surroundings. But in 2015, a real scientific revolution took place when the New Horizons probe, sent by National Aeronautics and Space Administration to explore the universe, reached an incredibly distant location, Pluto itself. So what did we see through the eyes of this spacecraft? It should be noted that it managed to capture images many times higher in quality than those taken by the Hubble telescope in 1996. And before that, we had no idea that there was a dwarf planet in this location at all. Scientists suspected that there should be a 9th object in the solar system, in addition to the 8 discovered ones, but they searched for it for a long time without success. The situation didn't change until a young man from Kansas, Clade Tombaugh, through persistent observations of the night sky, discovered a small spot slowly moving in the darkness. That spot turned out to be Pluto. And now, thanks to the relentless advancement of technology, we can take a closer look at the object and even see its far side. Hubble. So, what did the New Horizons probe discover on the surface of this frozen world, as if it were deliberately made out of blocks of ice? Of course, the probe managed to capture only a part of Pluto's surface. Much still remains a closely guarded secret, but even what the lenses of the New Horizons telescopes have seen is enough to understand. This, a completely alien, cold, and hostile environment for humans, yet still indescribably beautiful. The probe did not enter Pluto's orbit, it just flew by, but it was lucky enough to capture a beautiful natural phenomenon, a sunset on Pluto, and it looked stunning. The photos obtained also made it possible to conclude that Pluto's surface is very heterogeneous. It is covered with multi-kilometer icy plains, gentle hills, impressive fractures, strange grooves, deep basins, steep cliffs, huge craters, and vast mountain systems, which makes the landscape of this celestial body somewhat similar to Earth's. However, what we are used to calling ice on Pluto takes on absolutely grotesque shapes and implausible properties. At such low temperatures on the surface of the dwarf planet, several modifications of ice are formed, each characterized by completely different crystal lattices, melting points, densities, and other properties. Astronomers believe, like with Europa, that a liquid water ocean might exist beneath the 300-kilometer thick ice mantle. The only question is when we will be able to study it, considering that at its farthest point, Pluto is almost 7.5 billion kilometers from the Sun. This won't happen as soon as we would like. The hemisphere of Pluto, hidden from telescopes, is the one that will be revealed. Did the New Horizons probe manage to get even a little glimpse of the other side of the planet? Yes, although only slightly. In any case, it helped to understand that the terrain of both hemispheres is roughly the same, meaning it's heterogeneous. The high contrast of the object allows for a stunning image, where mountain peaks rise above the surface like exotic skyscrapers. This is especially noticeable in the legendary sunset image you saw earlier. Astrophysicists noticed the planet's mountains resemble Earth's penitents, snow formations found on Chile's Chagnantor Plateau. Indeed, compare both images and see for yourself that this assumption makes sense. The mountains on Pluto resemble sharp-topped pyramids, just like the structure of fern fields on Everest and on the same Chilean plateau. In this context, it's interesting to consider exactly how such penitent snows are formed. By the way, they were named that because the outlines of this amazing group resemble monks in pointed hoods, kneeling with their heads slightly bowed. So, What if scientists managed to find out about the origin of this strange phenomenon? Based on the experiments conducted, the penitent snow forms during the process of ablation, that is, through periodic cycles of melting and freezing. And all this happens under conditions of significant solar radiation and very low temperatures. As a result, the ice turns directly into gas, bypassing the liquid state. However, on Earth, such formations reach a maximum of 30 meters, and they are that large only on Everest, while in most cases they barely reach 5 meters. Meanwhile, on Pluto, full-fledged mountain peaks look like this. And what exactly causes the formation of such mountains on Pluto still remains an open question. And now for the most interesting part, how New Horizons managed to obtain some information about the far side of the celestial body. This time, the scientists solved the problem quite cleverly. They maximized the resolution of the photos taken by the probe as it approached the planet. Of course, they turned out blurry and indistinct, but still, it's better than nothing. In addition to the icy spikes, the very prototypes of penitentes, crossing lines of enormous size and length were discovered on the far side of Pluto. Most likely these are mountain faults and ridges, whose appearance could be attributed to some tectonic activity, if not for one thing. But what is the distinctive feature of the terrain on Pluto's visible side? The first thing that catches the eye, of course, is the Tombaugh region, named after the planet's discoverer. According to scientists, this scar was formed as a result of external impact on the celestial body, similar to such regions on Mercury and the Moon, as well as the Martian Valley, Marineris. And what of it, you may ask? The fact is that these faults and mountain ranges are located roughly opposite the Tombaugh region, only on the other side of Pluto, so they may also indicate a catastrophic event and provide even more information about it. Is that really all the spacecraft discovered? New Horizons on the far side of Pluto? The brightest and most significant discovery is the Simonelli crater, which is 250 kilometers in diameter, and judging by its reflectivity, is completely covered in ice. A mysterious stripe was also discovered, interrupted only on the Sputnik plain, a location where the Tombaugh region is partially located. Scientists attribute the stripe's appearance to cycles of freezing and expansion in a hypothetical subsurface ocean within the planet. It is this ocean that could have created this global rift over thousands of years, affecting the icy crust under enormous pressure. By the way, the New Horizons probe also saw the Tombaugh region in a, so to speak, new light, so the images turned out much clearer and more understandable. This area is incredibly diverse in terms of terrain, and it is bordered by two mountain ranges, Hillary and Tenzing. The latter rise 3.5 kilometers from the base, which is about the height of Japan's Mount Fuji. At the same time, the Hillary Mountains are not very high. At most, they soar up to 1.6 kilometers. If you look for their earthly equivalent, it would be Mount Snezka. In the Czech Republic, the Tombaugh region is often called the heart of Pluto because of its shape, and one part of this heart is located on Sputnik Planitia. The column's diameter, nearly 1,500 kilometers, shows just how vast the Tombaugh region is. Some scientists suggest that this is an ancient impact crater that, over millions of years, has been filled with frozen gases. It is believed that the diameter of the object that once fell onto Pluto's surface was about 650 kilometers. It was this object that left eternal unhealing scars in the form of a titanic basin and mysterious lines on the dark side of the planet. It can be assumed that the event was truly catastrophic. What leads us to this conclusion? Not only because of the scars on Pluto's surface discovered by New Horizons, but also for another reason. The area where the intersecting lines are located is most likely a chaotic terrain with a jumble of various landforms, from faults to ridges. This chaos could have appeared as a result of a powerful shock wave that circled the planet several times. Remember the eruption of the Krakatau volcano in Indonesia? When the shock waves met, they could have created the jumble of what we see now. What other discoveries did the New Horizons probe make just by flying past Pluto? It managed to study the atmosphere of the dwarf planet quite well. It turned out that it's very thin and filled with nitrogen with traces of methane, and it also contains particles of carbon monoxide. The atmospheric pressure on Pluto is very low and its values are quite variable. When Pluto is very far from the Sun, it receives 3 times less heat than at the closest point of its orbit. Accordingly, the atmosphere on the dwarf planet can be very unstable. The average temperature of the atmospheric layers is about minus 180 degrees Celsius, while on the surface, there is an even more deadly cold, reaching minus 223 degrees. If you add to all this the eerie sounds of Pluto, the picture becomes quite creepy. What can be said in conclusion is that Pluto is an oddball among the planets of the solar system, and not just because it was expelled from the ranks of classical celestial bodies and then classified as a dwarf planet. Its orbit is completely unlike the paths of the other planets. One segment of it allows Pluto to come closer to the Sun than Neptune, while another takes it billions of kilometers away from our parent star. A year on the ice dwarf is the longest in the solar system and lasts almost 250 years. Just think about it. That's 250 years. Its day is just over 6 Earth days long. By the way, that's one of the reasons that prevented New Horizons from studying the planet in more detail from all sides. The surface relief of Pluto amazes the imagination with strange structures, the origin of which is incredibly difficult to explain. Its ice is harder than diamond, and beneath the icy crust, which is hundreds of kilometers thick, there may be a warm ocean heated by a molten core. And who knows, maybe at least primitive life has already originated in its depths. In short, the discoveries brought to us by New Horizons tell us that Pluto is something special in the solar system, still mysterious and unexplored, and it will most likely remain that way for many years. But nothing stops us from thinking about it. The story of the solar system's planets seems long understood, leaving nothing new to discover. The last scandal was Pluto's exclusion from the list of main planets, and after that, there was relative calm. However, in 2016, scientists noticed that something unusual was happening beyond Neptune's orbit, there, at the edge of the solar system, where huge masses of icy objects move along specific orbits. The strange thing was that they should have been influenced by the forces of an external object. But at the same time, none of the planets known to us in the solar system could affect these objects. This led scientists to the assumption that somewhere out there, another planet is hiding from us in the solar system, and they named it Planet 9. What is it like? The mass of this mysterious planet may be 10 times that of Earth, and it is 400 to 800 astronomical units from the Sun. As for the origin of Planet 9, there are many different theories. Some claim that it formed just like the other planets of the solar system, that is, from a single gas and dust disk. Others believe that Planet 9 is so far from the other planets because it is under the influence of the Sun's powerful gravity. Scientists have spent many years trying to find evidence of the existence of this amazing planet. They have used not only the latest telescopes, but also various mathematical formulas and computer modeling. And finally, this has borne fruit. We need to figure out why it is so difficult to detect a planet that is within the solar system. And that's even though we're already studying the far reaches of space. But before that, let's find out what information scientists have gathered about Planet 9. And here's the first unexpected twist. In fact, people started talking about Planet 9 back in 1781, right when Uranus was discovered. As time went on, scientists noticed something strange. Uranus was moving along its orbit differently than it should have, according to calculations. Moreover, its speed wasn't constant. It would periodically decrease and then increase. This gave reason to believe that Uranus was under the influence of an unknown object. This question arose in the 1840s when it was suggested that Uranus might be under the gravitational influence of a planet unknown to us. This hypothesis was proposed simultaneously by two scientists in different countries, Englishman John Couch Adams and Frenchman Urbain Le Verrier. It should be noted that neither scientist had any actual evidence, only complex mathematical calculations. Urbain Le Verrier described his conclusions and sent them to the Berlin Observatory, where the scientist Johann Galle used a telescope to study the area indicated by Le Verrier's calculations. And they were right. There, they discovered Neptune, which became the first planet to be found using mathematical calculations. It would seem that after that, the matter could be considered settled. The hidden planet was found, and now scientists knew about all the planets in the solar system. If only it were that simple. After some time, while observing Neptune, researchers discovered that the planet was also deviating from its original trajectory, although not as much as Uranus. And then the question arose, what if there's another planet out there? Scientists continued their search, and yes, that's how they discovered Pluto, and at that time it joined the ranks of the planets in the solar system. For many decades, the situation seemed quite clear, but over time it became obvious that Pluto's gravitational forces were not strong enough to cause changes in the speed and shifts in the orbits of other planets. So, was there still something else beyond Neptune after all? The year is 1951. At that time, the scientist Gerard Kuiper suggested that there could be an entire group of icy objects beyond Neptune's orbit. A few decades later, in 1992, a small icy body was discovered, which was located just beyond Neptune. This was the first evidence of the existence of the supposed cluster, which was named the Kuiper Belt. In the 2000s, many other objects were discovered one after another, which finally proved the existence of the Kuiper Belt. So, over time, scientists abandoned the theory that there was a massive planet beyond Neptune. The gravitational anomalies could have been caused by a cluster of such low-mass icy objects. This was quite a logical explanation, but everything was turned upside down again in 2003. This is related to the discovery of Sedna, a trans-Neptunian object whose orbit is one of the widest in the solar system. Here, scientists noticed some oddities connected to its points of closest approach to the Sun. Sedna's orbit was originally supposed to have a distinctly circular shape, since it was formed as a result of the accretion of less massive bodies, and also the orbit on which Sedna is located. It collided with others, which would have been the main obstacle to accumulating mass. In other words, under such conditions, such a huge object simply would not have had the opportunity to form. And here we had to return again to the idea that some other unknown body was influencing Sedna and its orbit. A few years later, we found more objects with highly elongated orbits, such as Eris. In 2005, this revived active discussions about the existence of Planet 9. If trans-Neptunian objects were not influenced by external forces and their motion was chaotic, they would move around the Sun in different directions and along different trajectories. Instead, we see a certain pattern, which gives even more solid ground for the Planet 9 hypothesis. You can also notice that the major axes of the orbits, meaning the lines between the closest and farthest points from the Sun, are arranged quite evenly, which again confirms the influence of an external body. Unlike other objects like Neptune, finding the elusive Planet 9 turned out to be not so easy. There are several reasons for this. First, the planet's specific orbit is most likely more elongated. So Planet 9 spends a huge amount of time at a distance that's too far from us. Secondly, the planet has a relatively low speed of movement, so in some situations it can easily be mistaken for a star. Thirdly, the approximate distance from Planet 9 to the Sun is between 400 and 800 astronomical units. This makes it difficult to detect even with powerful modern telescopes. And of course, we should keep in mind that we will have to explore a huge area of space, and for that, we will need decades, if not hundreds of years. The discovery of Planet 9 is of great importance for all space science, because it will help us gather more information about how the solar system was formed and what might await us in the future. In the context of this issue, it would be interesting to find out how Planet 9 ended up in the outer part of the solar system in the first place. Here, scientists are considering several theories. First, Planet 9 formed during the early solar system from fragments of other objects that were thrown into distant regions by gravitational forces. The second theory is similar to the previous one in that Planet 9 was thrown into the outer part of the system by gravity, but it formed in the same way as the main planets of the solar system. At the orbit formation stage, it was forced to leave their ranks. But the third version tells us that Planet 9 was actually a rogue planet, meaning one that moved freely through the universe and didn't have a star to control its movement. And at some point, the sun's gravity grabbed Planet 9, pulling it into the boundaries of its system. Probably because of this, Planet 9 has an elliptical orbit. Planet 9 could turn out to be either a Pandora's box for us or the greatest reward for years of effort. However, we can say for sure that the discovery of the planet will make us look at the structure of the solar system from a different perspective. On our channel, we've already talked more than once about the achievements of the James Webb Telescope, and even now it's tirelessly working on new space discoveries. At the moment, the telescope has started studying an exoplanet that is twice the size of Earth and is located in the constellation Leo, 120 light years away from our planet, and its name is K2-18b. So, what's so interesting about it? Without further ado, let me reveal some of the details to you. The exoplanet might turn out to be a real oceanic kingdom, since biological compounds have been found in its atmosphere in the form of signatures similar to those produced by phytoplankton on Earth. Under the influence of one of its stars, K2-18b experiences enormous tsunami forces. Planets entirely covered by oceans are a unique and fascinating type of world, as their oceans can reach depths of up to 100 kilometers. At the very bottom, various types of ice unknown to us may form since the high pressure simply doesn't allow water to remain in its liquid state. You can also observe certain types of metals and rocky formations on such exoplanets. On planets that are far from their parent star, the ocean may be completely covered with ice. This often happens with low-mass objects whose mass is about 6 to 8 times the mass of Earth. Such an icy, rocky world is very similar to some moons in the solar system. If a planet is unable to attract helium and hydrogen to its surface, then under the influence of turbulent disturbances, the upper layers of the ice cover begin to melt. As a result, a liquid layer forms, which can be up to 140 kilometers thick. Under high pressure, forms of ice can appear that will not melt. But if we have the opposite situation, and the exoplanet is able to attract helium and hydrogen, it gradually transforms into a gas giant. And so K2-18b is one of the most intriguing ocean exoplanets. And thanks to James Webb, we know a little more about it. We know that the exoplanet completes a full orbit around its main star. In 33 days, the world is fully covered by ocean. Previously, it was believed that K2-18b belonged to the mini Neptunes, but further research showed that this is not the case. It is assumed that the conditions on the exoplanet may be favorable for the emergence of living organisms. An advantage here is the atmospheric layer. We don't know its full composition, but we do know that it definitely contains carbon dioxide, methane, helium, and hydrogen. And the interesting discoveries don't end there. Recent studies have shown that there are traces of an organic compound called dimethyl sulfide, on the surface of K218b. What is that anyway? Surely when walking near the seashore, you've noticed that distinctive fresh smell. That's dimethyl sulfide. It's produced by certain types of algae and plankton. However, this compound often appears in sewage wastewater as well. And in that case, the smell is, to put it mildly, not pleasant. Does that mean the exoplanet could be habitable? It's not that straightforward. Of course, we shouldn't write off K218b, but we need to take into account the actions of its parent star. It belongs to red dwarfs. Even though it's cooler than our sun, the flares there are much more powerful. The younger the red dwarf, the stronger its flares. This can have a devastating effect on the atmosphere of planets that are in the habitable zone. Of course, an exoplanet can restore its environment. In general, this process is still not well studied, so we cannot rule out the possibility of life developing on K218b. Interaction with the parent star leads to the formation of powerful tsunamis on K218b. To begin with, let's talk about what this phenomenon actually is and the essence of a tsunami. It's not just that these are very high waves. The main feature is the way they are formed. The waves originate very far from the shore, triggered by volcanic eruptions, landslides, and earthquakes. Most often, tsunamis are caused by oceanic earthquakes, about 85 cases, and the consequences of tsunamis are very serious. The waves can easily wipe entire cities off the face of the earth. An interesting fact, the highest recorded tsunami, which occurred on July 9, 1958, moved at a speed of 160 kilometers per hour, and the waves were 460 meters high, or even higher. At that time, it happened in Alaska. And the most paradoxical thing is that the cause of the tsunami was not an earthquake, but a landslide. And landslides very rarely provoke tsunamis. It was a unique case of its kind. Tsunamis are capable of turning gentle, friendly waves into a deadly wall. By the way, 1 cubic meter of seawater weighs a whole ton. And keep in mind that thousands of tons rush toward the shore at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour. If a person gets caught by such a wave, they'll literally be crushed, and there will be no chance of survival. As you can imagine, something similar happens on KEY 218b, only on a much larger scale on KEY 218b. There is a sufficient amount of carbon, and on the exoplanet, it circulates between the ocean and the atmosphere. In some cases, this could create stable conditions on KEY 218b. Even a red dwarf may not be an obstacle to the development of life. Planets and systems with active red dwarfs can be considered as possible places for the emergence of life. These stars are even more stable compared to our sun. They can provide conditions for life over long periods. Researchers believe that conditions on planets in red dwarf systems, such as KEY 218b, may be suitable for life. Theoretically, all that's needed is continuous illumination coming from the star. To confirm this hypothesis, more detailed research is required, which will take more than a year. Right now, this is being done by the James Webb Telescope, which uses infrared sensors to perform spectral analysis, detecting possible organic compounds. So far, this is the only method for searching for life in other star systems, and perhaps underwater, far from our eyes. There is a whole world hiding that we have yet to discover. Is there life on Mars? We've heard this question for years, and honestly, everyone is tired of it. Recently, astronomers have focused on a different question. Neptune is one of the most distant, unexplored, and mysterious planets in the solar system, a giant sphere made of frozen gases. In its more than 1.5 century journey around the Sun, Neptune is constantly accompanied by Triton, its faithful moon. Until recently, scientists believed that life on these seemingly absolutely lifeless celestial bodies was impossible. Probably this is one of the reasons why National Aeronautics and Space Administration canceled the Triton mission, which was planned for 2038. Within the project, special attention was planned to be given to Triton the largest moon of Neptune. This is not surprising, since Earth probes have rarely visited such unimaginably distant corners of the solar system. The only one who has been there is Voyager 2 in 1989. But instead of answering the questions that have long interested scientists, it only added even more and increased the curiosity of the scientific community. When will we get answers to them? Now, considering the unexpectedly postponed mission, not soon, but astronomers do have some assumptions and developments. Will they help answer the questions of whether there is life on Neptune? And if so, under what circumstances? V. This planet is very rarely considered as a platform for any kind of life. The conditions in this cold, inhospitable world are just too harsh. But why have there been suggestions now that life might actually exist on Neptune? The thing is, when Earth-based telescopes took a closer look at the planet, some strange things were discovered. For example, during the warm season, which lasts about 40 years on Neptune, the object, for some reason, doesn't heat up as would be logical, but instead cools down. And secondly, how did such colossal hurricanes appear on such a cold planet? Hurricanes that could fit several Earths inside them. After all, this isn't hot Jupiter with its vortices and turbulent atmosphere, is it? What exactly did Voyager 2 see on Neptune? First of all, a large dark spot, which scientists identified as a titanic hurricane. By the way, in 1994, the Hubble telescope did not find the impressive structure in that location. It turned out that Neptune's atmosphere is very turbulent, even though it receives almost no sunlight, only about a third of what Jupiter, which is literally bathed in sunlight, gets. By the way, Neptune has a slight resemblance to Saturn, and not just in terms of size. Voyager 2 discovered that the planet has small rings, which are invisible from Earth. The probe also recorded very bright auroras at the poles, much more spectacular than those on our planet. By the way, in 2022, James Webb also discovered faint rings around Neptune, which made it even more similar to Saturn. It's unknown why, but the mission that was supposed to go to Neptune is currently on hold. Sorry for the pun, this planet has so many mysteries. To begin with, Neptune wasn't supposed to appear in this location at all. If you look closely, the object's core is only a bit larger than Earth's. Most likely Neptune once looked like that, but over time it became surrounded by layers of different gases, like cotton candy. A huge ball, later these gases simply froze onto the core. You might ask, what's so strange about that? Planetologists didn't notice anything at first either, but a later analysis of the planets in the solar system, especially the giants, revealed some interesting information. If you look at Jupiter, which is closer to the Sun than Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, its mass of 318 Earths is quite justified. But further out, there is a shortage of material for planet formation, so Saturn and Uranus are smaller in size and mass. But not Neptune, even though Neptune, after Pluto was excluded from the list of planets, is the most distant object from the Sun. It is 2.5 times heavier than its neighbor Uranus. How can we explain such a discrepancy? After all, if it had formed within the boundaries of the solar system, it should have been half the size and much lighter than Uranus. After studying the issue in more detail, planetary scientists concluded that Neptune formed somewhere near Jupiter, and then, as a result of some gravitational cataclysm, Jupiter simply pushed the planet to the outskirts of the solar system. There's nothing surprising about it. The colorful gas giant is a master at such tricks. However, computer simulations showed that, as a result of such a maneuver, Neptune should have left the boundaries of our star system altogether. Perhaps instead of itself, it sent some planet X on its way. But this is a completely fantastic scenario for which too many variables would have to come together. Alongside this hypothesis, other versions are also considered, for example, the instability of the protoplanetary disk, which contributes to the appearance of giant planets, but they also do not stand up to criticism. So could Neptune be an outsider in our solar system? Perhaps at some point, he wandered through the vastness of space and accidentally ended up here. This theory helps astronomers come to terms with the inconsistencies related to giant planets on distant orbits, where they shouldn't even have formed. But the main question is how, in a world where the average temperature is minus 200 degrees Celsius and sometimes reaches absolute zero, where winds blow at speeds exceeding those of a jet engine, life could possibly arise. Let's begin with the unusual aspects of hurricanes. Generating these winds requires enough heat. Where would it come from? On an icy chunk 17 times heavier than Earth. Astrophysicists suggest that inside the planet there is a very hot core, possibly heated by the decay of some radioactive element, similar to Earth. But here's what's interesting. As we mentioned earlier, in 1994 the Hubble telescope did not detect the Great Dark Spot, and later it turned out that there are many more of them on Neptune. This was confirmed by numerous studies. That's why it feels like these aren't tornadoes, but rather huge colonies of microorganisms multiplying at incredible rates, forming round and oval structures in Neptune's atmosphere. However, classical astronomy still tends to believe that these are storms and hurricanes, and not signs of life on the planet. The winds there are 3 times stronger than Jupiter's and 1.5 times faster than sound. Meanwhile, they should be much slower than those on Jupiter, since they're made not of light gases, but of crystals of frozen metal, as hard as diamond. Accordingly, this is what gives Neptune its bluish color. But where does such activity come from? Especially since hurricanes are not the only evidence of it. Neptune emits 2.5 times more heat than it receives from our parent star. All this suggests that beneath the many kilometer-thick layer of dense clouds on the planet, there is something hidden that generates heat inside the celestial body. If National Aeronautics and Space Administration does decide to send a probe to Neptune, with the Neptune Dicey launch planned for 2031, the study of the planet's atmosphere will definitely follow. The probe will gradually descend through the thick bluish clouds, and this journey will be equivalent to traveling to the center of the Earth. The spacecraft will fly in absolute darkness, occasionally illuminated by lightning that flashes across Neptune's sky. When the probe reaches the mantle, it will enter a realm of extremely high temperatures, almost like on the surface of the sun, not to mention the tremendous pressure. Images of Earth's mantle looking like molten lava probably appeared in your mind's eye. Push those associations aside, because on Neptune, the mantle is completely different. It's more like an ocean 1.5 Earths deep. Anyone who made it at least to 5th grade will ask, how does a liquid not boil at such a high temperature? The thing is, Earth's laws don't apply on Neptune because of the immense pressure. This is no longer an ordinary liquid, but an ionized supercritical fluid. It's a state of matter where there is no distinction between liquid and gas phases. An ionized supercritical fluid has the high density of a liquid and the low viscosity of a gas. Such unique properties can only appear under extreme conditions, like those found on Neptune. One of the properties of an ionized supercritical fluid is its high electrical conductivity. This is just a hypothesis. It can't be proven experimentally yet. This is how scientists explain the unusual behavior of Neptune's magnetic field, which extends far into space and for some reason is not aligned with the planet's poles. What else can be said about the conditions on Neptune? The planet can be called diamond-like because carbon, due to the critical pressure, is compressed into diamonds almost instantly, and their sizes can reach up to meters in diameter. It is believed that if you remove the multi-layered atmosphere and the ionized ocean, known as Neptune's mantle, you could find a diamond core underneath. If we recall some of the moons of the giant planets, particularly Europa, with its subsurface ocean that is likely teeming with life, then why not assume that there could be something similar inside Neptune as well? It would be a good idea to take a look around the planet's surroundings, especially paying attention to its moon. Triton, discovered in 1846, is truly a fantastic world that is even more suitable for the emergence of extraterrestrial life, although it's hard to call Triton hospitable. It has cryovolcanic activity and extremely low temperatures, reaching minus 235 degrees Celsius, which is close to absolute zero. This is a planet where icy geysers frequently erupt from the surface, reaching heights of up to 150 kilometers. Its surface is covered with frozen lakes of methane and nitrogen, and there could very well be a warm ocean bubbling beneath the crust. This idea occurred to scientists because of the strange geological activity of Triton, which may be caused by a hot core maintained by the radioactive decay of elements. Just like Neptune, but how exactly did Triton appear near Neptune? Judging by its characteristics and behavior, it's just as much an outsider as Neptune, and it didn't form next to its planet at all. Triton was probably captured from the Kuiper Belt or possibly from deeper space. Then perhaps beneath its ice lies a truly advanced civilization. This is hinted at by the planet's very active atmosphere, and on the other, unexplored side of the celestial body, powerful stations have been built for drifting through the vastness of the universe. Do you think it's science fiction? It's quite possible, however. Irina Romanovskaya, a scientist from Houston Community College, recently published an article describing a very similar method of space travel. Finally, it's worth asking, is life actually possible on the surfaces of Neptune or Triton? If the hurricanes on the gas giant, which are also increasing in number, are considered rapidly multiplying microbial colonies, then it's something to think about. As for Triton, the hundreds of volcanoes erupting frozen nitrogen and the dead methane lakes hardly leave any chance for life to originate on its surfaces. At the same time, in both cases, the emergence of certain forms of life is possible in subsurface oceans. If these are not highly developed civilizations represented by branched underwater structures, ultra-modern cities, and other futuristic objects, then some living layer in the warm part of the ocean, consisting of hydrocarbons or ammonia with water, may well exist. It would be a success to at least discover primitive microbial life, not to mention exotic whales or radiation rays phosphorescing in the inky dark depths. You can use your imagination in the comments. What kind of life do you see on Neptune or Triton? Who knows? Maybe a random comment will help with future scientific research and lift the veil on a long-standing mystery.